The rediscovery of Aristotle's writings posed a problem for the Catholic Church. Aristotle was fundamentally a down-to-earth, in a way quite material thinker. He did not believe in abstract, perfect forms. For Aristotle, the material universe was eternal. It had to be, because whenever something changed, it changed from something into something else. So, therefore, the process of change must have been eternal, and there could not have been an absolute beginning to the world. This idea was hard to square with the Christian doctrine of creation. The philosopher who had a go at plugging Aristotle's philosophy into Christian theology was St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas greatly respected Aristotle. Whenever he refers to him, he speaks of him simply as the philosopher. Inspired by Aristotle, Aquinas produced what became known as the medieval synthesis, or the philosophy of Scholasticism. This was a profound, systematic attempt to integrate Christian theology with the best philosophical theories of the time. An example of Aquinas' philosophy is the first cause argument for the existence of God, in which Aquinas identifies Aristotle's idea of the unmoved mover with the Christian idea of God. Another example is the way in which Aquinas develops a theory of the soul as the form of the body. For Aquinas, the soul is not a separate ghost-like thing, but rather it is the way in which the body is organised, the form of the body, an idea he took from Aristotle. So human beings, for Aquinas, are unities, not composites made of radically different entities such as an immaterial soul and a material body. The philosophy of Scholasticism reigned in Europe for hundreds of years. It only really began to be challenged at the dawn of the era of modern science. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the pioneers of science, such as Copernicus, Bacon, Galileo, Boyle, Descartes and Newton, began to criticise much of what Aristotle had taught. They did so not on the basis of philosophical reflection, but on the basis of observation. To rely on observation itself was controversial. Scholastics had argued that scholasticism was the true philosophy and should continue to be taught as such. So in a way, tradition had more authority than observation. Simply, really, because it had been around such a long time. It was considered impudent to question the authority of a philosopher as great as Aristotle. Nonetheless, Galileo and others did exactly this. Galileo realised, as a result of observations made using newly invented telescopes, that many things Aristotle had taught were simply not true. For example, Aristotle taught that everything in the universe orbited the Earth, whereas Galileo, with his telescope, observed moons orbiting Jupiter. Aristotle had taught that the surface of the moon was perfectly smooth, whereas Galileo observed that it contained mountains and craters. The heavens weren't so perfect after all. Another key element of Aristotle's philosophy was the idea of explaining things by reference to their purpose or end. This way of doing philosophy is called teleology. But philosophers such as Boyle and Bacon argued that a proper explanation should provide us with an understanding of the mechanism by which things happen. For example, we might ask the question, why do cheetahs run so fast? A teleological explanation would say that cheetahs run quickly because it's in their nature. That's what they do. That's what it is to be a cheetah. But the scientists who sought for mechanisms weren't happy with that as a sufficient reason. They wanted to know what it was that gave tutors this ability. And so a traditional organic conception of the cosmos, based more on biology than on mechanical principles, was beginning to give way to a new form of science, a form of science in which the universe was thought of in much more mechanistic terms.